Welcome back to another episode of Humans of HR. And as always, we are in conversation with Mr. Chan Narayan. And the topic that we have selected today is something that we've been receiving a lot of comments regarding. And we also understand that this seems to be uh, one of the cornerstones when we talk about HR. And the facet that we're going to be discussing about today is hiring. Now, this potentially could make or break the organization. We understand that, especially in new age organizations, it's not those capital intensive factories, setup, machinery, but it's the human capital that actually builds and drives organizations. So in that context, hiring has become extremely important. So what should one look for while hiring? We understand that JDs get drafted, they get polished, they hit the ground, they get circulated, and then the interviews happen, and then they find somebody, and then the other person serves a 3 month notice period and then joins the organization. And we also understand there is a strong possibility that by the time we go through this cycle, there could be certain changes in the JD depending on how the market is shaping up. So it's not surely as straightforward as it sounds, but obviously there are frameworks, there are logics that we could keep in mind, which could surely help us hire better. So that's the topic for today. So, Chief, what has been your experience in terms of understanding this whole puzzle of hiring the right people and hiring the right attitude?
So that's a very interesting thing to say, hiring the right people and hiring the right attitude. I have slightly different views on this whole aspect of hiring, and I'll explain that. But let me simplify first and explain the entire process of hiring needs, from an organization's perspective, needs to take care of three things. The first one is that the person sitting across you in the interview, or the person, or the candidate you are evaluating, will this person be able to do the required job well? Is the person competent to do this work that you're hiring the person for? And so that leads into a lot of different areas that you need to test for, or that you need to assess, in order to convince yourself that this person will be able to do the job. So that's part one. Part two, then, if the person is capable of doing the job, in your opinion, then you need to find out what are the aspirations, and what does this person want and is looking for from this role with your organization, from a perspective that, are you as an organization capable of meeting those expectations? Because if there's a huge gap between the person's expectation and your organization's ability to provide these expectations, the person will become unhappy very soon and is not likely to stick around for very long. And so what typically happens is that this is a dialogue. So once the interview panel has ascertained that this person is competent to do this job, then the second part that they try and understand is, what are your aspirations? Why do you want to join us? What excites you? And what are you looking for in the role, in your career progression? And then see realistically whether the organization can provide some of it or all of it. And then by having a dialogue, help the person come nearer the ground reality. Saying that, look, if you're looking at a movement up in 6 months' time, it's not going to happen. It's going to take at least 1 year, for example. And so it's important to do that matching. And suppose you find two candidates who are equally competent, and there is one amongst them whose expectations are nearer to what your organization can provide as compared to the other individual whose expectations are way out. you would want to hire this first person whose expectations are more in alignment with what your organization can provide. Because the initial honeymoon can will only last for a few months or a few days at most with Gen Z, right? And so when the reality hits the road, and the when the rubber hits the road, you're going to have a very dissatisfied person. The third aspect that the hiring piece involves is then ascertaining. So once you have ascertained that this person is competent to perform in that role, and that their expectations are uh, more or less in alignment with what the organization can provide, then you look at the third aspect, which is how well will this person fit in with the existing team that is there. Will they complement the existing team skill set? Will they get along well with the existing team? Will they rub team members in the wrong way? Will this person create a problem for themselves or for others because of their attitudes, because of their behavior? And so that is where you get into attitude aspects. That's where you get into behavioral aspects. And you do ask a lot of behavioral events questions to kind of see and imagine in your mind how this person is fitting in your existing team, if an existing team is already there. And that's important. However, in very rare instances, organizations can also kind of look at a strategic disruption, that they want to hire somebody who's going to create a discomfort in the existing team, because this person is bringing in skills or experience that the existing team doesn't have. And because this person is coming in and doing those things, the existing team also has to learn that, which is pushing them from their area of comfort. A lot of large organizations therefore hire these very sharp young MBAs who will come in and who will bring skills and capabilities that the existing team doesn't have, and the organization can't force them to do to acquire those skills. But you can get in somebody who is very proficient in doing those things, and then the other people will feel kind of will know that there is a gap between where the world has moved to and where they are. And so hopefully some of them will learn and some of them push themselves. So these are the three aspects that an organization needs to assess before they make an offer. And therefore, that's how you are able to rank your first preferred, second preferred, third, etc. candidate based on these things. Now, to go back to fit. So, in my opinion, fit is only as good a metric as whether the person is capable of doing this job that you're offering. Now, so if the person has had similar experience or experiences in a similar domain, has qualifications that are relevant to that domain, and wants to continue working and growing in that domain, then there is a natural segue into that role. However, when you look at the, the traditional way of figuring a fit, which is having a job description and a job specification. It specifies what are the things needed for this person to be able to do this job. Job description is a list of things that the person needs to do in that role. Job specification specifies what are the qualifications, experience, and attitude that this person needs to have to be able to meet that, to be able to carry out those tasks. So, for example, if the job needs somebody to read instructions, then you need somebody who is literate, who will be able to read it, right? Uh, if the job needs certain skills, and these skills are very important. For example, you have a role where somebody has to deal with very high voltage electricity, then you very well have somebody who has the skill. Otherwise, they'll end up harming themselves and others, as well as qualifications for handling those hazard. And better still, they also have had prior experience where they have handled this safely earlier, and so they know and they will not commit a mistake. So the so what I'm trying to say here is that job descriptions are dead on arrival. What a job description says is maybe just the bare bones, and things change. As a person starts getting into a role, the role evolves. The external environment changes, and therefore the role changes. I think the shelf life for any job description is maybe, if you're lucky, 3 years. I think a better way to look at the hiring, therefore, is through looking at it from the competency framework lens. Competency framework says that what are the competencies that a person needs to have to be able to be successful in this role. So let me give you a quick background about the competency framework itself. The consulting firm Haber came up with this concept of consulting. And by the way, in their research data, there are about 500 Indian managers that they had interviewed. Their research methodology was to ask the company to get them to talk to people in the following manner. They wanted to talk to people who were considered by their superiors and by their colleagues and as being outstanding managers, for example, that they were really performing well in their roles. They wanted to talk to some of the people who were considered to be average performers, people who were meeting the expectation in their role. And the third category, the smallest number, was people who were considered to be below average, who were struggling to deliver on their roles. So what they found was that, and they listed the competencies of each of, they assessed the competencies of each of these three categories for the same role. What they found was what the average performers had. Those competencies they labeled as threshold competencies, that these are the competencies that are needed for people to be able to
The bare minimum.
their job. And so anything less than this, the person will not be successful in that role. They will struggle, they will fail. People who are outstanding performers, who were doing exceptionally well in the role, they looked at the additional competencies that they had, and these were considered to be the differentiating competencies. What are the competencies that, if a person has them, will help this person go above and beyond? They will be able to deliver much better than what is expected. So that was the original research into competencies. And thanks to Professor Prem Rajan of XLRA, all entire generations of Excelers have a lot of clarity about this. So now the thing is that any competency framework that you create is typically going to last only for 3 years. Within 3 years, those competencies will evolve, they will change. And so the organization has to create a fresh competency dictionary for each role, competency directory for each role. This role requires ABC. So it keeps evolving. The best ways for hiring, therefore, are by using competencies. And indeed, some organizations spend the time, make the effort to select people, especially at the entry level, based on competencies. And this is done through what is called an assessment center. Some organizations use it even for helping grow people in their roles to the next level roles through what are called development centers. That if this is the next level role for you, What are the competencies required in the next level? What competencies do you have and what are you lacking? And therefore, what training and development interventions we need to do for you as an organization and for a particular segment of people who need to move from one role to the next level role? What training and development needs to be provided for so that a lot of you or some of you might be able to make it from this level to the next level internally instead of my going to have to go outside to hire from the outside. And so to my mind, the competency framework is the better one. And also the selection process through an assessment center has the highest selection validity. Selection validity means that if I have hired a person for a particular role by using an assessment center method, then if I had it has 70% validity or more, which means that 7 out of 10 people hired through the assessment center method will be successful in that role. There are only 3 people who might struggle, as compared to an unstructured interview has a selection validity of only about 10 to 15%. That means that only 1 out of 10 or at the most 2 out of 10 people whom you selected through a unstructured interview, just interacting with them, 8 of them are likely to not be up to the would not be able to do that job. All the other forms of interview, when you do a structured interview, you push up the selection validity a little higher. But the highest of all of these methodologies, including your behavioral events interviewing methodology, which is a pretty strong and robust methodology, will only take you to about 30%, 35%. And so to begin with, my proposition is that half your, it's better to toss a coin and decide. Should I hire this person? If heads, I hire; tails, I reject. You still have 50% validity there. So it's a thought worth pondering on how you're choosing your people. The last piece that I want to add onto this conundrum is that one of the things that inspires me as an HR professional, and I read it very early in my career. I don't remember who the author was. I suspect this lady had something to do with HR for Yahoo.com. I do remember the title of the essay that she had written. I'm not sure if her name was Chris Shaki or something else. If somebody finds out amongst the audience, I request you to please point me back to it. I've been trying to find that for a long time. The title of that essay was Getting Extraordinary Results from Ordinary People. My lived experience has validated it. If you have a manager who can inspire people, who can help people figure out how to deliver on whatever role it is that they're asked to deliver on, people usually kind of step into it and they're able to do well. Um, and the test of a great leader, good manager, is whatever team that they are given, whatever hand fate has uh, provided to them, they're able to build winners. They're able to build great performers out of whatever they have gotten. So it's as much about the talent, capability, competency, whatever you want to call it, as much as what people managers are able to do. Now, one has to be careful while hiring, because when there is a competency gap between your threshold competency and, let's say, all the 10 candidates you had shortlisted. You're sure that nobody is going to be able to do this, and you will have to handhold them and train them and mentor them. In which case, one has to very seriously look at what is the available bandwidth of the people who are going to be managing them. Will they be able to handhold? Will they be able to train? Or do you need somebody who will have to deliver on the job from day one without having any external support, any mentoring, any training. So one has to, most organizations get very desperate, and they can see that there is a gap, but they say, what option do I have? I'll have to go with what is available. So there, unless you created the bandwidth, unless you've created the provision for helping this individual come up to the threshold, it's going to be a problem. So with that, back to you in case that provokes any subsequent questions.
Very interesting. Very interesting.